With everything happening in the Idaho murders case and new details coming to light every single day regarding the alleged murderer Bryan Kohberger, many people are discussing the parallels between Bryant and huge, giant incel loser Elliot Rodgers. Elliot's crimes and behavior has been talked about here and there, mostly in relation to that Papa Rodgers Facebook account that had been commenting with so many eerie details regarding the murders. But so many people still are unclear the depths and true character of Elliot Rodgers, who he was, what he did, and what the creepy characteristics really are. And those who are familiar with him haven't even heard half of who this nut job really was. So today we're going to go deep into the traits of self-proclaimed gentleman Elliot Rodgers. And as we go, I want you to comment as soon as you hear something that you think aligns with what we know so far about Bryan Kohberger. Buckle up, guys, because this one is crazy and he is an all-time mega grade A loser. So I'm about to get a little wild in this one. I'm feeling a little wild. I'm feeling like I'm going to be calling this loser out for who he is. I could use a lot more other words, but I don't want you to flagging me. Incels don't come for me, but your bro Elliot is the worst, and such a pathetic little dweeb. I love that word, dweeb. I just love it. All right, guys, we've got a lot to go over. I'm Annie Elise. This is 10 to Life, and let's dive right in. All right, so according to the Oxford Dictionary, an incel is a member of an online community of young men who consider themselves unable to attract women sexually. They also are typically associated with views that are hostile towards women and towards men who are sexually active. I mean, honestly, guys, the writing's on the wall there. You are, no offense, but you are a loser. Anyways, incel is short for involuntarily celibate. Further, incels are often distraught with their lack of sexual experiences and often express this disappointment as anger towards women. They're pissed that they're not getting any action, so they think it's the woman's fault. They take it out on them when it's no, hi bro, the problem is probably you because you either think so highly of yourself or because you're just weird. And the fact that you are pissed that you're celibate, it's bro, then get a better personality, get a haircut, cover up the grays and use them just for men. I don't know, get some confidence, but it's nobody else's fault. It's not my fault that you're not getting the P and the G. It's not her fault. It's not his fault. And if this couple over here is getting it on every other day, which if they are, my guess is going to be that they're probably in the honeymoon stage and not fully married people, you get what I'm saying. But anyways, you're getting mad at these people who are showing the PDA, so get a girlfriend. Is it that hard? Is it really that hard? And if it is, you're the problem, nobody else. Sorry, guys. I told you, this one has me just heated because I feel like this group of men who think they're so cool and awesome, but they're not. They're incels. They just bug me. Again, incels don't come for me. I'm just speaking. There are several corners of the internet where people who deem themselves to be incels hang out and talk amongst one another, sharing their struggles, their beliefs, and just general discussions. One of them used to be Reddit, but Reddit ended up actually banning the subreddit for incels because they said that it glorified and incited violence against women. But get this, that one subreddit alone had around 40,000 members. But there is one infamous incel who the most extreme incels recognize to be their hero, their idol, their icon, their saint, and that is Elliot Rodgers, also known as the Supreme Gentleman. Guys, I didn't dub him that name. I think it is so cringe and ultra embarrassing. Anybody who's calling somebody or calling themselves the Extreme Gentleman, now I get why you're not getting any. Now I get it. I get it. It is crystal clear to me now. So I've talked about Elliot Rodger and the incels here and there, but today we're going to be doing that deep dive of who he truly was and what exactly led up to the horrific Isla Vista massacre in 2014, where right after, Elliot took his own life. Now, by no means am I trying to diminish the tragedy and the truly horrific actions that this guy did. Certainly not. And I have immense amount of respect for those victims and the family. But in this video, I want to just call out this loser for who he is. So if I'm a little less, not serious, but if I'm a little bit more off the cuff in this video than I normally am, that's why. Because this little twerp just is like, bottom of the barrel. So I recently read his 141-page manifesto, and I read it so you guys don't have to. And guys, not only was it shocking, terrifying, disturbing, disgusting, sick, nauseating, all the words you could imagine, but it revealed so much more than I had previously known about who this guy really was. Elliot was ultra entitled, a misogynistic, narcissistic, delusional, and pretty much crap human being altogether. A little twerp. So guys, be prepared, because this is going to be a disturbing one, to say the least. And as I said in the intro, let me know in the comments what you're seeing, what red flags you see, anything that stands out to you in this story, anything that parallels with Bryan Kohberger, because it is insane. Elliot wrote his 141-page manifesto, which, by the way, who needs a 141-page manifesto? But he wrote it in the days and weeks leading up to his planned attack. The title is My Twisted World, the story of Elliot Rodger. So before we go into Elliot's background, I wanted to read the beginning paragraph of his manifesto, just to give you an idea of just how truly effed up this guy is. It starts, Humanity. All of my suffering on this world has been at the hands of humanity, particularly women. It has made me realize just how brutal and twisted humanity is as a species. All I have ever wanted was to fit in and live a happy life amongst humanity, but I was cast out and rejected, forced to endure an existence of loneliness and insignificance, all because the females of the human species were incapable of seeing the value in me. This is the story of how I, Elliot Rodger, came to be. This is the story of my entire life. It is a dark story of sadness, anger, and hatred. It is a story of a war against cruel injustice. In this magnificent story, I will disclose every single detail about my life, every single significant experience that I have pulled from my superior memory, as well as how those experiences have shaped my views of the world. This tragedy did not have to happen. I didn't want things to turn out this way, but humanity forced my hand, and this story will explain why. Okay, guys. First of all, I would feel sad for this guy if it wasn't so completely pathetic and off base. The fact that he's saying all of his problems with humanity in the world are because women don't see how fantastic of a guy he really is. Maybe you're just not that fantastic, Elliot. Maybe you're basic. Maybe you're vanilla. Maybe that's why nobody thinks you're that fantastic. Now, don't get me wrong. I feel bad for anybody who feels like they can't quite find their place in the world, or that they feel like they're an outcast, or that they aren't seen, so to speak. That is awful, 100%. But for this guy to have the nerve to say it's the women's fault that this is all unraveling, that it's because they can't see his excellence and how what did he say? His story was this extravagant story, or this whatever adjective he said. Give me a break. So let's talk a little bit about this guy. Elliot Oliver Robertson Rodger was born on July 24th, 1991 in London. His parents were Peter Rodger and Chin Rodger. Elliot describes his dad as being from British descent, hailing from the prestigious Rodger family, a family that was once part of the wealthy upper classes before they lost all of their fortune during the Great Depression. His mom was born in Malaysia and worked in the film industry and became very good friends with George Lucas, who is the director of Star Wars, and also good friends with Steven Spielberg. Elliot also said that his mom even dated George Lucas for a short time. Social ranking in class was very important to Elliot, and he nearly deemed himself as royal as he was born. And despite himself being mixed race, Elliot was a very firm believer in the supremacy of white people. And he was obsessed with fame, notoriety, money, kind of like how he threw in that his mom even dated George Lucas before. We don't know if that's true, but I wanted to bring it all up because you will notice this more and more as the story goes on. After Elliot was born, his parents moved to the county of Sussex. They lived there for a few years, and this is what Elliot called the best years of his life. Then he says, I believe that it was during the time after my 4th birthday that my father came to the decision to eventually move to the United States. As he was just becoming a director, he believed Los Angeles would offer more opportunities. We took a short trip to California to gain an initial look at it. I don't remember much of this trip, but I do remember having a good time. At the age of 4, I, Elliot Rodger, had already been to 6 different countries. Who can claim that, huh? The United Kingdom, France, Spain, Greece, Malaysia, and the United States. Anyways, before moving to California, Elliot's little sister Georgia was born. Later, his family ended up moving to Woodland Hills, California. A few years later, he moved to Topanga, and Elliot was really excited. He enjoyed a nice, comfortable, and privileged life growing up because of his dad's successful career. His new house was 2 stories, he had a swimming pool, this lovely deck that provided a view of the lush mountains over in the valley. It was fantastic. Elliot was also raised with multiple nannies that helped his mother take care of him and his younger sister when his father would go out of town for work. Elliot's parents ended up getting divorced when he was 7 years old, and like most little kids, this was a really hard time for him. His dad stayed in the new big house, and his mother got a smaller house nearby where he had to share a room with his sister. But Elliot didn't mind being at his mom's house because he got more attention from his mom than his dad. Later, his dad moved into another house, and when Elliot went over there, his dad had a new girlfriend, Sumaya, and this girlfriend started living with his dad full-time. Elliot said that Sumaya was from a good family from Morocco, but that he was completely taken aback that his dad got a girlfriend so quickly. He even says that this was the first time he even heard of the concept girlfriend. Elliot wrote in his manifesto, because of my father's acquisition of a new girlfriend, my little mind got the impression that my father was a man that women found attractive, as he was able to find a new girlfriend in such a short period of time from divorcing my mother. I subconsciously held him in higher regard because of this. It is very interesting how this phenomenon works, that males who can easily find female mates garner more respect from their fellow men, even children. How ironic is it that my father, one of those men who could easily find a girlfriend, has a son who would struggle all his life to find a girlfriend? Now, this is really interesting to me because it illustrates that some of his thoughts regarding dating and being cast out started so young. I mean, seriously, he was 7 at this point when he recognized that his dad had a girlfriend and he started garnering all of this respect towards him. But I have to also say, the words acquisition, when he said the acquisition of a new girlfriend for my father, he makes it sound so transactional, so businesslike, taking emotion out of it, certainly love out of it. It's very detached to me. That's how I'm receiving it. But as you're commenting, do you receive it that way? Quickly let me know in the comments. So Elliot went through the rest of elementary school being somewhat normal, actually. A few friends here and there, but not some isolated outcast that you would think. Not at all. He was shy, but other than that, he was fine. And he had typical hobbies like Nintendo, Pokemon cards, nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing that would make you raise the red flag and be like, whoa, 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 something is wrong with this guy. But obviously nobody knew his inner thoughts and that he was, a walking red flag. Later on in elementary school, Elliot realized he was much shorter than the other boys, and even younger boys were better at sports and stronger than him. This had to have been challenging for him. And he also got very jealous if he was hanging out with a group of friends and then the other friends were talking to each other a lot and leaving him out. He would actually leave the room and go cry. He did the same thing when family friends would pay more attention to his younger sister. He would go and cry. Now, while I want to rip on this a little bit too, I'm not going to, because I know that feeling of feeling left out. I felt that way in my childhood as well sometimes, and that doesn't ever feel good. And especially if you are a girl, you know this, growing up in elementary school, middle school, even high school, if you have a group of friends where it's 3 of you, you know that there's often times where it's 2 against 1. It's just the nature of the beast. Girls get catty, they leave you out, it's always kind of like that. So while I want to rip on this right now because I just hate this guy so much, I'm not going to, because that is really sad. If he felt like he was singled out even in his group of friends, and then also singled out when his family would come over and they were all hanging out with his sister and not him, so he would go and cry, that does pull at my heartstrings a little bit. Not enough to make me really have any sort of sympathy for this guy, but you get what I'm saying. But basically, anytime something like this happened throughout his childhood, pretty much anything that doesn't go his way, it either would send him to throw a mega tantrum or to just go, isolate, and cry. Elliot admits that he was always jealous by nature, even saying that jealousy and envy would later rule his entire life. This was also the period of time when Elliot started having conflicts with his stepmom, Sumaya. One of the things that he used to get really pissed off about, which I don't understand why, is she would make him drink milk in the morning. I don't know why that's, such a bad thing. You're a kid, but maybe she wants you to have strong bones so that you're not the loser left out in sports. I don't know, but he would get pissed off about that. And one time she disciplined him in front of his friends, and then this really set him off. So much so that he vowed to never have friends over ever again. In 4th grade, Elliot says, "My little 9-year-old self had another revelation about how the world works. I realized that there were hierarchies, that some people were better than others. Of course, I was subconsciously aware of this in the past, but it was at this time of my life, at 9 years old, that I started to give it a lot of thought and importance." And that is an understatement of how he would view the rest of his life, because that's all that mattered to him back then and in his future. However, at the time, Elliot realized he wasn't one of the cool kids, and this was a huge problem for him. He said, "I'm half white, half Asian, and this made me different from the normal, fully white kids that I was trying to fit in with. I envied the cool kids, and I wanted to be one of them. I was a bit frustrated at my parents for not shaping me into being one of these kids in the past. They never made an effort to dress me in stylish clothing or get me a good-looking haircut. I had to make every effort to rectify this. I had to adapt. My first act was to ask my parents to allow me to bleach my hair blonde. I always envied and admired blonde-haired people. They always seemed so much more beautiful." Elliot then got blonde tips on his hair, which he ended up liking a lot after initially hating it. When Elliot was in 7th grade, his school crush didn't like him back, and that is what ultimately started his absolute hatred and disdain towards women. Guys, I'm not even joking. He literally wrote in-depths about this 7th grade romance gone bad in his manifesto. He said that there was a group of 7th grade girls and his crush was there, and that someone in the group was teasing him, but not his crush, somebody else. But about his crush, he says, "She must have thought I was the ultimate loser. I hated her so much and I would never forget her. I started to hate all girls after this. I saw them as mean, cruel, heartless creatures that took pleasure from my suffering." Guys, this is scary. He is in 7th grade here. And I think this really highlights his overall delusions and entitlement and even narcissism, because literally this poor girl didn't even know he liked her, and another girl was the one making rude comments. But yet later on, he blames her for his actions, her who had nothing to do with anything. I mean, that is absolutely bananas to me. He also named her in the manifesto, first and last name. And after he went on his murderous rampage in 2014, some members of the incel community started threatening her, thinking that she was the root of all of Elliot's, turmoil and sadness, not even threatening her and going after her because of the murders that unfolded after the fact, going after her because she apparently slighted Elliot. It is bizarre. Seriously, WTF. It is crazy. This is her. Could you imagine not even remembering some random guy who you didn't even know had a crush on you in 7th grade, and now these grown men are pissed off at you because how dare you not like him back in 7th grade? This became such an issue that she had to make steps to get the unredacted copy of the manifesto taken off the internet. And now, luckily, in most versions, her name is redacted. As Elliot starts to get older and enters puberty, it's almost like he wanted to remain a child forever and didn't want to go through puberty, which is not uncommon when you're young to just be scared of the change, but Elliot took it further, a lot further. From his manifesto, he says things like, "Only after the advent of puberty does the true brutality of human nature show its face." He also says that one day while he was chatting on AOL Instant Messenger, hey, sorry for all of you Gen Zers, you might not even know what that is, but for all of my millennials and even Gen Xers, you know exactly what it is. AIM, you'd put the away message on, you'd put it in like lowercase cap. I think my screen name was like something stupid, like crayons are colorful. But anyway, I digress. So he says one day that while he was chatting on AOL Instant Messenger, one of his online friends sent him some naked photos of a girl. Elliot said, I didn't know what was happening to me. Was it the first inkling of sexual desire in my body? I was traumatized. My childhood was fading away. Ominous fear swept over me, and I stopped talking to that person. Now, I'm not going to pretend to be in the mind of a young boy going through puberty. I don't know what you think when you're going through that. I know what I thought of as a female, but I don't know what you think of when you're a male. But from the men I do know in my life, and from even the men that I knew back then and can remember, never once had I ever heard of somebody receiving a naked photo and then cutting off that friend for sending it. Usually, it's the guys hiding Playboys under the bed or, in their dresser drawers. And the mom's cracking the sheets when you're trying to do laundry. Very rarely do you see a circumstance like this. And guys, that's just my opinion. Don't come for me. That's just my opinion. Later on, when he was a teen, he would go to a cyber cafe called Planet Cyber with some of his friends, and they would play video games online while they were there, like World of Warcraft, which is a game that Elliot became completely obsessed with. He recalled a memory which he said was one of the darkest days in his manifesto. In this, he said, "One time while I was alone at Planet Cyber, I saw an older teenager watching an adult film. I saw in detail a video of a man having sex with a hot girl. The video showed him stick his pee inside a girl's V. I didn't know anything about sex at the time. I barely even knew what sex was. To see this video really traumatized me. I had no idea what I was seeing. I couldn't imagine human beings doing such things with each other. The sight was shocking, traumatizing, and arousing. I walked home and cried by myself for a bit. I was quite shaken for a few days. Finding out about sex is one of the things that truly destroyed my entire life. Sex. The very word fills me with hate. Once I hit puberty, I would always want it, like any other boy. I would always hunger for it. I would always covet it. I would always fantasize about it, but I would never get it. Not getting any sex is what will shape the very foundation of my miserable youth." Guys. Now at this point, Elliot was 13 years old, and I'm not really sure what to make of all of that. I don't know if that's a common thing boys entering puberty feel, like shock and disgust that they just watched something that warped them forever, so much so that they cry afterwards. I don't know. I always kind of was under the impression that boys would sometimes Google things like boobs with their friends or spell it on their calculator, or I don't know, just stupid, dumb, young things like that when you're a young kid. Any men watching this, please comment below and let me know if it is normal to cry afterwards. The rest of Elliot's high school days were him being shy and absolutely hating any of the boys that got a lot of attention from the girls, or guys that were starting to have their own sexual experiences. I mean, he really just detested them. He was bullied for being scared of girls, and he would often also get called names. He says that one time, one boy who was tall and had blonde hair called me a loser right in front of his girlfriends. Yes, he had girls with him, pretty girls, and they didn't seem to mind that he was such an evil a-hole. In fact, I bet they liked him for it. This is how girls are, and I was starting to realize it. This was what truly opened my eyes to how brutal the world is. The most meanest and depraved of men come out on top, and women flock to these men. Their evil acts are rewarded by women, while the good, decent men are laughed at. It is sick, twisted, and wrong in every way. I hated the girls even more than the bullies because of this. Again, very weird because he's like targeting all of his hatred for what this guy said to him towards the women. Why is it always the women who are the root of the evil? Maybe the problem is where the person who's calling you a loser is. I don't know. That's just my opinion. So after this, Elliot told his mom that he could not go back to that school, and his parents took him out of school for a month before enrolling him in a new school. Throughout the later part of his youth and into adulthood, Elliot submerged himself in playing video games like World of Warcraft as much as he possibly could because it was an escape from reality and he didn't have to be himself in those moments. He stopped hanging out with his friends as much in person with the few friends that he actually had, except for one friend, and that was only because in online gaming you can talk to whoever you're playing with or even with a group from a headset and a microphone. His dad and stepmom ended up having a baby, Elliot's half-brother, Jazz. At this point, Elliot was not getting along at all with his stepmom. He hated her and said that they had conflicts pretty much every time that he went to his dad's house. He didn't like that Sumaya encouraged him to go outside to try to make new friends with neighborhood boys, and also she limited the time that he could play on his video games, trying to say, go outside, get some fresh air, make some friends, get off of this computer, and he hated her for that. As Elliot got older, he tried to focus solely on World of Warcraft, which to him was like his safe haven from the world. He later found out that some of his online friends would actually hang out in person to play, and that he was never invited. So now, in Elliot's head, he felt like not only was he an outcast in real life, but now he's also an outcast in this digital virtual video game world. So sometimes he would cry while playing the game and felt like he came here to escape all of the loneliness that he felt, and it wasn't even working, so why continue to play? And once again, maybe I'm just a softie right now, but that also makes me sad to feel like you're an outcast in the real world, so you're playing video games with your make-believe friends and doing something to keep your mind off of it. Then you feel like you're an outcast in that world too. Where do you fit in? That would be hard for anybody, I think, honestly, at any age. So at this point, Elliot was almost 18, when all of the thoughts that he had about girls, boys, life, his lack of experiences, all really started to come together and blend together in a very dangerous way. He developed extreme feelings of envy, hatred, and anger towards anyone who had a sex life, and he saw them as the enemy. He felt condemned to live a life of lonely celibacy while other boys were allowed to experience the pleasures of sex, all because girls did not want him. This left him feeling completely inferior and undesirable. But like I said, this time was different. Elliot felt like he couldn't just stand by and accept such an injustice anymore. He began to have fantasies of becoming very powerful and stopping everybody from having sex. He wanted to take that away from them, just like they somehow took it from him in his mind. Elliot saw sex as an evil and barbaric act. Now, this turning point made him feel extreme rage and anger on the inside. Specifically, Elliot said, "This was when I formed my ideas that sex should be outlawed. It is the only way to make the world a fair and just place. If I can't have it, I will destroy it." Okay, buddy. After coming to the extreme conclusion of that, Elliot spent more time studying the world and what Elliot describes is a horrible and unfair place. Then he got to thinking that just because he was doomed to suffer a horrible life doesn't mean that he's insignificant. And this was the beginnings of what would lead to the horrific massacre that would take place years later. Elliot said, "I have an exceptionally high level of intelligence. I see the world differently than anyone else. Because of all the injustices I went through and the worldview I developed because of them, I must be destined for greatness. I must be destined to change the world, to shape it into an image that suits me." Now I want to just pause here for a second and talk about how deeply twisted and screwed up this guy is. At this point, there is not one time that Elliot has acknowledged where he ever even made an effort to speak to a girl or to try to have something to do with them or even have a life at all, since he was completely enthralled in his online video games as much as he could be. But yet, it was a deep injustice for him. Yes, I know this is obviously the writings of someone completely delusional, narcissistic, evil, but oh my gosh, he wants to change the world into an image that suits him because he says he's so intelligent that that's what he is put on this earth to do. Who the heck talks like that? It just goes to show how deep this was for him, and not for nothing, buddy, but if you are so confident that you were put on this earth to do something because you are so highly intelligent, then where was that confidence when you were trying to swoon on women? Come on, guy. Come on. Have a little bit of a backbone here. As time went on, Elliot realized that his chance to ever rise to power and right the wrongs of the world were extremely slim, and that it was naive of him to think that he could become a dictator one day, which, yeah, you think? But it didn't stop Elliot from fantasizing about it. His hatred for people who had sex festered inside of him like a plague. When he saw young couples walking around the mall, he said, "My anger and hatred intensified greatly. It was the worst torture ever to see them making out and being intimate. My life, if you can call it a life, was a living hell. My parents quickly took note of how radical I was becoming, and they made a hasty plan to change my life. Of course, that is what they claimed. I think they were just trying to find a way to get rid of me because I was too hard to deal with." So this plan that his parents had come up with was for Elliot to spend the summer after he graduated high school in Morocco with his stepmom and his little brother Jazz. His parents literally forced him to go, and he was miserable the entire time. After he returned, he went to Pierce Community College. This was the first of a few different community colleges that Elliot attended. During this time, Elliot's obsession with money and his appearance grew, but so did his wicked outlook on life. Elliot bought his first lottery ticket after his mom explained the lottery to him and that each ticket provides a very small chance of winning millions of dollars and that the jackpot could rise to the hundreds of millions. He says, "I couldn't believe it. I didn't know such a thing existed. After buying my ticket, I felt thrilled with the prospect of having a chance to become a multimillionaire." This story is tragic, and as the story goes, it gets worse, and I promise, I'm not trying to make light of anything here at all, but this literally feels like a scene out of the movie Dumb and Dumber. I think this goes without saying, but that ticket obviously didn't win. He didn't become a multimillionaire, and neither did the other tickets that he bought. But for him to say, and I can't help but laugh, guys, for him to be like, "Oh my God, it was a revolutionary moment," or whatever he says, and he's like, "The thought of having this little single piece of paper and becoming a multimillionaire." Bro, walk in a casino. You live in the valley. Go down to Hawaiian Gardens. Hit a slot machine. Like, what are you even talking about right now? Because of all of this, his obsession with money was getting started, and he really, really wanted to get rich. Elliot wasn't making friends or meeting girls at Pierce Community College, and he was absolutely miserable there. But now he wanted to take all of this hatred and dissatisfaction with the world and do something productive with it. He concluded that during his free time, the best thing that he could do was spend time self-educating. So he began a daily routine of walking to Barnes & Noble in Calabasas every day, where he spent hours reading books that ranged from biographies of powerful leaders, histories of significant periods, self-help books, philosophy and psychology textbooks, and even historical fiction novels. Sometimes in the afternoons at Barnes & Noble, Elliot would see young couples strolling through the store holding hands, and again, this absolutely enraged him. He would literally be so overcome by envy that he would run off to the bathroom in Barnes & Noble and start weeping in the stall. Guys, it is just so pathetic and embarrassing. I'm one for understanding and giving grace when somebody feels left out, but you're crying because you see couples in public holding hands? Get a grip. Get a grip, bro. However, this didn't stop him from continuing on this self-education path. In fact, in the time he spent at Barnes & Noble, he expanded on the political and philosophical ideals and soon became even more radical about them than he ever was before. It was all fueled by his wish to punish everyone who is sexually active, because obviously all of this was completely unfair to Elliot. Elliot said, "I started to have the desire to create a world where no one is allowed to have sex or relationships. I again saw that as the perfect fair world. Reproduction can be accomplished without sex through artificial insemination. Sex is evil, as it gives too much pleasure to those who don't deserve it. Life is not fair. One can either accept that fact, keeling over in defeat, or one can harness the strength to fight against it. My destiny was to fight against the unfairness of the world." Once again, I am left speechless. I'm telling you guys, this manifesto is just crazy. The fact that somebody actually has these thoughts, then puts pen to paper to make these thoughts reality in their mind, then to take action on them, it is scary, scary stuff. So Elliot took a break from school and worked a few construction jobs that he liked and worked off and on, but he never found long-term work. His parents even hired a few life coaches for Elliot because he wasn't really liking his college and they felt like he just needed help with direction in life. They were worried about him. So his first life coach, Tony, suggested a few jobs, but Elliot refused them all. Elliot said that the problem with all of the jobs that were available was that they were all jobs that he considered beneath him and against his character. Elliot genuinely believed that he was an intellectual who was destined for greatness and vowed to never perform what he called low-class service jobs, which is actually pretty ironic because since Elliot's dad had a successful career in directing smaller movies and commercials, he had connections to possibly go in that direction as well. Elliot had said he thought about becoming a writer, but felt like it required too much work and would take too long to become successful, and he didn't want to do it. So which is it? To me, it's obvious that he was just too lazy to do anything at all and just wanted things handed to him, which he expected his parents to do. And honestly, they may have enabled some of that. I don't know. But what I do find interesting about that whole piece, about him thinking that the jobs were beneath him and that he was so intelligent and that he needed to have this posh, great job where he could show off his intellectual talents, kinda, and I don't know if you've been commenting, don't forget to do it, but it kind of reminds me a bit of Bryan Kohberger. Because the only job we've ever known him to have before the TA piece of it and all of that was as the security guard. No other places of employment have come forward. We know that he looks at himself, or allegedly looks at himself, very highly, very smart, very intellectual, got a master's, getting a PhD, being a TA, grading people very harshly, allegedly. It's just very interesting. I don't know. Maybe I'm a Lone Ranger on that. Let me know. So during this time, Elliot's mom started dating this guy named Jack, and he was well worth over $500 million, and he owned mansions throughout Bel Air and Beverly Hills. Now, when Elliot found out about this, he felt like if his mom married Jack, he would be rich, and that would definitely solve all of his problems. So Elliot started badgering his mom pretty frequently about marrying Jack, or any wealthy guy at all. To Elliot's dismay, she always refused and pretty much told him to knock it off, beat it, you're bugging me. She told him that she never wanted to get married again after her experience with his father. Then, and listen closely to this one, guys, he told her that she should sacrifice her well-being for the sake of his happiness, which this obviously only offended her further. I seriously can't with this guy. He's 18 years old. He wants his mom to marry a rich guy. He doesn't want to work. He tells her that she should sacrifice her well-being so that he can mooch off her boyfriend Jack's wealth. This is crazy. If this isn't entitlement, if this isn't privilege, I don't know what is. And he kind of got his wish, because even though he wasn't going to get all of his hands on Jack's money, his mom and Jack did give Elliot one of Jack's cars. Since Elliot refused all of the job suggestions, he decided he would be better off enrolling at another community college, Moorpark. Whenever he was getting ready for school and got his laptop out, he saw all of his old World of Warcraft profiles and games, and immediately decided to get back into gaming. And he remembered all of the happiness that he felt when he could escape reality. So he would often go on night drives and notice that on Fridays and Saturdays, a lot of young people would be out and about walking around, and that pissed him off more. So then he started avoiding going out these days. He can't seem to catch a break with himself. He is the definition of his own worst enemy. Eventually, Elliot stopped playing World of Warcraft because the game was getting so popular that he would sometimes have to play online with what he deemed as his enemies, meaning it was the rest of the population, and that some of these guys probably had girlfriends, so he just couldn't deal with it anymore. So he stopped playing. Elliot also hated Moorpark College and his experience there. So his parents came up with yet another plan, and this plan was for him to transfer to Santa Barbara City College, where he could move out of his mom's and get his own apartment. When they looked at apartments, they settled on Isla Vista. Elliot was excited about this move. He always theorized that one of the main hindrances from living the life he deserved was because he was living in his mom's apartment the entire time. So in the manifesto, Elliot wrote, "I thought to myself as we explored more of this college town that if I lived there, there would be no way I would have trouble getting a social life and losing my V card. It was the perfect environment to do so. If I can't get laid there, then there is no hope for me at all." I'm sorry. This guy is just such a freaking loser. Okay, shockingly, even since his whole life from his perception was filled with doom and gloom, Elliot saw this as a new chance for friends, love, acceptance, and fun, which was surprising to read, but good for him, I guess. Although he would always obsess over the worst years of his life where society and others had been unfair to him. He said, "I deserve better than that. I am an intelligent gentleman, and I deserve the love of girls more than other obnoxious boys of my age, and yet they get girls and I don't. That is a crime that can never be forgotten, nor can it be forgiven. I always wanted to exact my revenge on humanity for forcing me to live such a life, but I've also had the hope that if I can do things in life to make up for all of my suffering, then that in itself would be a form of peaceful revenge. In truth, the move to Santa Barbara was actually a chance that I was giving to the world, not the other way around. I was giving the world one last chance to give me the life that I know I'm entitled to, the life that other boys are able to live with ease. If I still have to suffer the same rejection and injustice even after I move to Santa Barbara, then that will be the last straw. I will have my vengeance. Now, this is obviously unsettling for a lot of different reasons. Primarily because he's saying, in a nutshell, he's saying, if I don't get laid here in Santa Barbara, I'm going to commit some massacre and have my vengeance. But the other concerning part of this, once again, the cringe way he's referring to himself as a gentleman, is basically like him saying how entitled he is to have these relationships and how other men don't deserve to be in relationships, how he's, the beacon of all goodness and every woman should flock to him and kneel down to him. It is so bizarre, his way of thinking. So completely bizarre. Because, I'm just going to ask a very point-blank question. What is it you're even bringing to the table? You play video games all day, you have no self-confidence, you can't keep a friend group, you hate women, you're entitled, you want to take your mom's money and think she should sacrifice her own well-being, you hate your stepmom because she gives you milk in the morning. You are weird. What are you bringing to the table? Why should all of these women flock to you? It makes no sense. Make it make sense. So Elliot's giving one last chance to the world, and he soon moved into his new apartment where he had 2 housemates. The 2 housemates were nice, but Elliot was getting annoyed because they kept inviting a friend of theirs over named Chance. Now, remember in the beginning when I said Elliot took a heavy liking to white people? Buckle up for this next part. Chance was African American, and there was a situation one night at the apartment. Elliot was eating in the kitchen when Chance came over and started bragging about his success with girls. Elliot couldn't stand listening to this, so he decided to ask them if they all were virgins. They all had really weird looks on their faces when he asked them this and said that they had lost their virginity a really long time ago. Then Elliot says, I felt so inferior as it reminded me how much I have missed out in life. And then this guy named Chance said that he lost his virginity when he was only 13. In addition, he said that the girl he lost his virginity to was a blonde white girl. I was so enraged that I almost splashed him with my orange juice. I told him that I did not believe him, and then I went to my room to cry. I cried and cried and cried, and then I called my mother, and I cried to her on the phone. How could an inferior, ugly bleep be able to get a white girl and not me? I am beautiful, and I am half white myself. I am descended from British aristocracy. He is descended from slaves. I deserve it more. This is insane to me. And this statement alone makes me not care at all if I'm showing any sort of empathy to this kid whatsoever, because you are a psychopath. And Elliot went on to spew more of his hate-filled ideas about how this was just absolutely ridiculous and how outraged he was to hear this and how big of an injustice this was to him. And this isn't the first time that he had feelings like this, which we are going to get into more. So this freaked out his housemates, so much so that after a week, they decided to move out, and 2 new housemates then moved in. Elliot's hopes of a new start in Santa Barbara were quickly beginning to collapse. Elliot said he made attempts to dress nice, to have his hair done well, so that girls would start to notice him in class, but they apparently never would come up to him. Which I feel like I just need to point this out again. He didn't go up to them either, at all, yet he took this as direct rejection. If you're not approaching them, there's no act of rejection. It's just them not approaching you. So he would go out on his night drives again, and he would see groups of attractive boys and girls hanging out and walking together, and this reminded him of his experience before in Calabasas, when he would avoid going on night drives on Fridays and Saturdays. On one occasion, after seeing people hanging out, he drove back to his apartment, and he says that he cried to himself, soaking his pillow in the tears of his agony. Again, not joking at all here, guys. And let's pause for a second and break this down. Obviously, anyone feeling so upset that they are brought to tears is very sad. And as much as I want to feel bad for this guy, I literally don't feel bad for him at all. He is making himself the victim of quite literally every single thing in his life without making any attempts to change his situation himself, other than expecting women to swoon over him. His victimhood is a reoccurring pattern in his past and continues to be there moving forward. But that isn't how life works. He doesn't even know or even acknowledge that some of the people he saw in class may have also been shy or reserved. He took it as rejection, but he didn't make any effort to talk to them. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume that he probably didn't appear approachable either. And the people walking around probably knew each other from before. It's not like they necessarily made friends on the street. So it's just completely idiotic to get so upset over this. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Am I overreacting? Am I just like callous and cold because of this guy? Or is this just bizarre? Are people being mean and not inclusive to Elliot? Or is he getting mad at his own conclusions and assumptions? Then Elliot says that he started to make attempts. But these attempts he did make weren't genuine, at least to me. On some weekends, Elliot would take a few shots of vodka and walk around town, hoping to stumble across people that he could be friends with. Then he would sit alone at a cafe, hoping girls would come up and talk to him before he sobered up. And this never worked out and made him even more upset. But honestly, how many girls are going to come up and talk to a random drunk guy sitting by himself in a cafe? He probably looked wasted and they thought he was sick or something. I don't know. That's what I would guess. I'd be like, who is this guy? I'm not going up and talking to him. In no way would I ever be like, oh my God, who is that drunk guy sitting by himself in the booth, slurring his words and staring around like a creep? I must go talk to him. I must have sex with him. Guys, like, this is what he was expecting to happen. However, sometimes I will say Elliot was a little successful. Like when a group of guys invited him to hang out for a little bit and have a few beers. But Elliot would get so blackout drunk that he would stumble back to his apartment and throw up on his floor. Even so, Elliot was proud that he had barely met some of his expectations just in terms of putting himself out there, and his new housemates seemed to actually like him, which was, a bonus for him. Then as another semester started, they all moved separately into different student housing apartments. His housemates even told Elliot to give them a call to hang out. So it didn't go completely disastrous for Elliot. He seemed to have a couple friends. One day his dad drove out to have lunch with Elliot, and while he was there, they saw a couple. The female was blonde and the guy was Hispanic. And this made Elliot so angry. In his manifesto, he said, "How could an inferior blank guy be able to date a white blonde girl while I was still suffering with my lonely V card? I was ashamed to be in such an inferior position in front of my father. When I saw the two of them kissing, I could barely contain my rage. I stood up in anger, and I was about to walk up to them and pour my glass of soda all over their heads. I probably would have if father wasn't there. I was seething with envious rage, and my father was there to watch it all. It was so humiliating." The next day, he went to Starbucks and had another encounter with a couple. Elliot ordered a coffee and sat down at a chair. A few moments later, Elliot looked up and saw a couple standing in line. Here is Elliot's account. The two of them were kissing passionately. The boy looked like an obnoxious punk. He was tall and wore baggy pants. The girl was a pretty blonde. It looked like they were into the throes of passionate sexual attraction to each other, rubbing their bodies together and tongue kissing in front of everyone. I was absolutely livid with envious hatred. When they left the store, I followed them to their car and splashed my coffee all over them. The boy yelled at me, and I quickly ran away in fear. I was panicking as I got into my car and drove off, shaking with rage-fueled excitement. I spent 3 hours in my car, trying to contain my tumultuous emotions. I had never struck back at my enemies before, and I felt a small sense of spiteful gratification for doing so. I hated them so much. Even though I splashed them with my coffee, he was still the winner. He was going home to have passionate, heavenly sex with his beautiful girlfriend, and I was going home to my lonely room to sleep alone in my lonely bed. I had never felt so miserable and mistreated in my life. I cursed the world for condemning me to such suffering. Guys, this is weird. First of all, don't describe it as heavenly lovemaking or whatever he said. That is so gross. Sorry, guys. That's a personal thing. That's a personal cringe. I don't like that. I don't like it at all. Elliot, in his dark and twisted reality, sat there and stewed over this encounter and his rage for a long time. And how he described it is just seriously disturbing. I wanted to do horrible things to that couple. I wanted to inflict pain on all young couples. It was around this point in my life that I realized I was capable of doing such things. I would happily do such things. I was capable of killing them, and I wanted to. I wanted to kill them slowly, to strip the skins off their flesh. They deserve it. The males deserve it for taking the females away from me, and the females deserve it for choosing those males instead of me. Ever since I was 17, I often fantasized about becoming powerful and inflicting suffering upon everyone who has wronged me in the past, but I never thought I would actually do it. At this point, after going through so much suffering and injustice, all of my innocence had been swept away. The world had been cruel to me, and it molded me to become strong enough to actually have the capability of returning that cruelness to the world. I had never been a violent person in nature, but after building up so much hatred over the years, I realized that I wouldn't hesitate to kill or even torture my hated enemies if I was given the opportunity. He felt like this about pretty much any couple he saw.
I presume about my age. I was enjoying such a nice view until they came and sat down and started kissing. This is the reason why life isn't fair. Why does that guy get to have such a beautiful girlfriend while I'm all alone? Why? Why can't I experience something like that right there? They're kissing right now. It's torture for me to watch, but I have to do this. I have to film this. I have to show the world why life isn't fair.
Now, at this point when I was reading the manifesto, I literally didn't even know what to think, other than WTF, 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 this is crazy. Look at all of these red flags. Like, getting that upset, I mean, clearly he has issues, but this feels like a lot. And this wasn't a one-off situation. He continued to get darker and darker. Elliot often looked out of his window and saw people socializing. He thought all of these obnoxious drunk boys were chatting with pretty girls, and he would wonder with great panic, as he would say, if they would have sex later that night. Now, this next part is truly disturbing. Elliot would even fantasize about barging into their rooms while they were having all of this heavenly sex, and in these fantasies, he would slash them to death with a knife. When the semester started, Elliot continued having the exact same issues he always had. One time as he was walking across the huge bridge that connected the two campuses, he passed by a girl he thought was pretty and said hi as they were nearing each other. And Elliot said, "She kept on walking and didn't even have the grace to respond to me. How dare she? That foul I felt so humiliated that I went to one of the school bathrooms, locked myself in a toilet stall, and cried for an hour." Which again, guys, I want to feel bad for this guy, but I would bet a lot of money that he barely turned his head towards her or projected his voice so that she could actually hear him, and she probably didn't hear him at all. It's all just so ridiculous that this type of stuff got him so riled up. Before I looked more into Elliot, I kind of assumed that maybe he did actually have these horrific, traumatizing experiences that were actually screwed up, but there hasn't been any so far that even comes close to him being wronged in some way by anyone other than himself. In fact, he was just an a-hole here. He was the one about to throw his orange juice, about to throw his soda, and then actually threw a coffee at a couple. Elliot's new roommates moved in one night, and they asked Elliot if he still had his V card. Elliot admitted it, and the roommates said that they weren't. Now this, once again, pissed Elliot off because the roommates were Hispanic. Elliot got so mad that he stormed into his room and punched the wall. His roommates heard the noise and started laughing even harder at him. The next day, Elliot almost got into a fight with one of the roommates. Elliot made plans to immediately move out of this apartment because he could not bear to live there anymore, but he would have to wait a month before the new apartment would be ready. He finally moved, and this time he would only have one roommate. Ellie described his new roommate as being chubby and short, and he literally couldn't believe that this guy had a girlfriend before. He didn't see how such a thing was possible, and even concluded that this former girlfriend must have been just as unattractive as he was, and that there was no need for him to be jealous in this situation. Now, I mean, for this guy who thinks he is so picked on, such a victim, and life is so unfair, he was extremely arrogant and unbelievably rude, constantly attacking other people's appearances, their weight, their race. It's just disgusting. Elliot was still on the hunt for a girl to just drag him home and into bed with her. He started buying more expensive jeans, shoes, and shirts because Elliot felt like his clothes were now better than some of the people he saw on campus, and this improved his self-esteem and his self-worth. Elliot became more and more obsessed with his appearance. He familiarized himself with what he thought were top-designed brands and bought new clothes every chance he could. He tried to adopt a sophisticated and suave persona and made his accent sound more eloquent in hopes that girls would find something attractive about it. He said, "It was the only persona that truly fit me. I was incapable of being an outgoing, boisterous jock, and I didn't want to be one. I was disgusted by such people, and I was disgusted at how girls were attracted to such filth. I wanted them to be attracted to me. That is how it should be, and I deserved it." The next semester when classes started, on the morning of the first day, Elliot wore an Armani exchange shirt and put on his new Gucci sunglasses. He admired himself in the mirror and felt a huge surge of enthusiasm. He was thinking there would be absolutely no way he couldn't get any girls now. And he said, "I set off for my college with the confidence that I would appear as a superior gentleman to all of the students there. I was a superior gentleman. That was what I was born to be, and it was now time to show it to the world. Once on campus, I immediately went to the restroom to look at myself in the mirror a few times, just so that I can feel more assured of myself. Yes, I thought, I am the image of beauty and supremacy." The image of beauty and supremacy? Okay. However, when he walked into his first class, it didn't go like how he thought. Nobody turned their head to look at him, and no girl lifted an eyebrow at his approach. So to Elliot, this was a colossal failure. All of that effort meant nothing. And once again, his life was over. Later in the week, Elliot was stopped at a stoplight in his car and saw two girls standing at the bus stop. He was dressed in one of his nice shirts, so he looked at them and he smiled. Apparently, the girls looked back at him, but they didn't smile. Elliot felt like a fool, and he drove away. He was infuriated and he knew he had to do something, so he made a U-turn, pulled up to the bus stop, and splashed the girls with his coffee. He said he felt a spiteful satisfaction as the coffee stained their jeans before he sped away. I mean, what a freaking psychopath. In his manifesto, Elliot was still raging over this situation, saying, "How dare those girls snub me in such a fashion? How dare they insult me so? I raged to myself repeatedly. They deserved the punishment I gave them. It was such a pity that my latte wasn't hot enough to burn them. Those girls deserved to be dumped in boiling water for the crime of not giving me the attention and adoration I so rightfully deserve." Needless to say, all of this just absolutely ruined his first week at his new college. Wah wah, small violin. A few weeks later, he found the name of one of the girls that he thought was pretty in his math class, Brittany. Elliot said, "Being the obsessed stalker that I was, I looked her up on Facebook, and what I found shattered my already wounded heart to pieces. She had a boyfriend. Not only that, but her boyfriend was the type of boy I have always hated and despised. A tall, muscular surfer jock with a buzz cut. As I looked at all of the pictures of the two of them together, I shivered with pure hatred. I could physically feel the hatred burn through my entire body. I wanted to kill both of them, and I was capable of doing it. Brittany should have been mine, and if I can't have her, no one should. I fantasized about capturing the two of them and stripping the skin off her boyfriend's flesh while making her watch. Why must my life be so full of torment and hatred? I questioned the universe with turmoil rolling inside of me. I screamed and cried with anguish that day."
I've been going through college for 2.5 years now. And in those 2.5 years, I've had to rot in bleak and sad loneliness, while other guys get to enjoy all the pleasures of, sex and socializing and partying. I've never had a taste of that, because no girls give me a chance. No girl at my college has ever expressed any interest in me. I mean, you give a chance to all these stupid, obnoxious guys that I see you walking with, but you don't give a chance to me. Why not? I'm such a magnificent guy. I'm beautiful. You can't deny that. I've traveled all over the world. I have so much to talk about. I'm civilized, intelligent, sophisticated. I have a sense of style. And yet you girls don't see it. And every single day, I have to be insulted by the sight of all these lesser men walking around with beautiful girls. I see so many couples where the guy is just so unworthy of having a beautiful girlfriend like that. And yet, they're together. He has her love. And I've never had any of that love and affection from girls. Why do you girls give those guys a chance, but not me? I deserve it more. It's not fair. Every single day I have to be insulted by the sight of guys enjoying girls while I'm all alone.
He ended up dropping his math class immediately after figuring out that she had a boyfriend, because Elliot said he couldn't look at her beauty anymore, knowing that some punk was able to enjoy having sex with her every single day. After he dropped his math class, he dropped all of his classes out of rage and anger. Since this random girl he never spoke to had a boyfriend, he felt like there was no point at all anymore, and that no matter how hard he tried, girls were not attracted to him. He felt like, what was the point of going to college to get a job if he wouldn't experience the pleasures of dating along the way? He felt like all of the experiences that he had had in college were awful, and now he would never be able to look back on his youth with happy memories. He only felt misery, and now he wanted revenge. After realizing that he would forever be a holder of his V card because women's sexual attractions are flawed, he figured that he would rather die than actually not have sex with a woman. He said, "I knew that if it came to that, I would exact my revenge upon the world in the most catastrophic way possible." So now he was starting his plan of how he was going to punish the popular kids and these young couples for having a better life than he did. And that is how the Day of Retribution, as he called it, came to be. The Day of Retribution in Elliot's world is a day in which I exact my ultimate retribution and revenge on all of the hedonistic scum who enjoyed lives of pleasure that they don't deserve. If I can't have it, I will destroy it. I will destroy all women because I can never have them. I will make them all suffer for rejecting me. He literally wanted to wage war. Over the next year, Elliot tried to win the lottery several times, thinking that if he hit the lottery, he would become rich and he would lose his V card, and that if that happened, he wouldn't have to go through with this Day of Retribution crap. Well, that didn't happen, and Elliot was now more depressed and angrier than ever. He purchased a gun, and he went to some shooting ranges and focused more on how women ruined his life, and his ideas got truly terrifying, radical, and crazy. In the manifesto, he said, "My life has been wasted, all because women hate me so much. All I had ever wanted was to love women, but their behavior has only earned my hatred. I want to have sex with them and make them feel good, but they would be disgusted at that prospect. They have no sexual attraction towards me. It is such an injustice, and I vehemently question why things had to be this way. Why do women behave like vicious, stupid, cruel animals who take delight in my suffering and starvation? Why do they have a perverted sexual attraction for the most brutish of men instead of gentlemen of intelligence? I concluded that women are flawed. There is something mentally wrong with the way their brains are wired, as if they haven't evolved from animal-like thinking. They are incapable of reason or thinking rationally. They are like animals, completely controlled by their primal, depraved emotions and impulses. This is why they are attracted to barbaric, wild, beast-like men. They are beasts themselves. Beasts should not be able to have any rights in a civilized society. If their wickedness is not contained, women should not have the right to choose who to mate with. That choice should be made for them by civilized men of intelligence. If women had the freedom to choose which men to mate with, like they do today, they would breed with stupid, degenerate men, which would only produce stupid, degenerate offspring. This in turn would hinder the advancement of humanity. Not only hinder it, but devolve humanity completely. Women are like a plague that must be quarantined. When I came to this brilliant, perfect revelation, I felt like everything was now clear to me in a bitter, twisted way. I am one of the few people in this world who has the intelligence to see this. I am like a god, and my purpose is to exact ultimate retribution on all of the impurities I see in this world. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Elliot found online communities with forums of men who had some of the same issues that he had. Reading the posts on these websites somehow confirmed to Elliot that he was correct in his assessment about women. He felt like some of the websites showed how bleak and cruel the world is due to the evilness of women. He even sent these websites to his parents so that they could understand why he was so miserable. However, his parents never even looked at the websites. This guy clearly needed help. I know I've read quite a few quotes from his manifesto, and some of them were deeply disturbing, but these aren't even some of the worst parts. The whole thing is truly sickening to read. Then something happened that was finally the last straw for Elliot. He wanted to give the female gender one last chance to provide him with the pleasure that he deserved. To do this, he decided to go out one final time in Isla Vista. He got drunk by himself and stumbled into a random house party. Elliot tried to act normal and be confident, but he became extremely frustrated that none of the girls were paying any attention to him. Later, he climbed up a wooden 10-foot ledge where some guys were hanging out. A couple of pretty girls came up and talked to the guys there, but they didn't talk to Elliot. Elliot was pissed. He started insulting everyone, and then in a hate-fueled rage, he tried to push as many girls off the 10-foot ledge to punish them for not talking to him. He was unsuccessful at doing this, and then the guys that were there pushed Elliot off the ledge. He broke his leg when he fell, so he stumbled around a little bit, walking away, and then realized that he was missing his Gucci sunglasses. Sorry guys, I'm trying not to laugh, but this guy is just such a tool. So he turned around and stumbled back to where the party was with his broken leg, but then he went inside the wrong house. When he was inside, Elliot started hurling insults and calling the homeowners names, and they took him outside and beat the crap out of him. Elliot felt like everyone had seen him, and he was mortified. So Elliot wrote, "The worst part of this whole ordeal was not getting beaten up. Oh no, it was the fact that no one showed any concern. There was only one group who helped me to the end of Del Playa, but after that, they abandoned me. Not one girl offered to help me as I stumbled home with a broken leg, beaten and bloody. If girls had been attracted to me, they would have offered to walk me to my room and take care of me. They would have even offered to sleep with me to make me feel better. But no, not one girl showed an ounce of concern for me." So let me just make sure I'm following here, little baby Rodger. So the girls that you just tried to push off a 10-foot ledge didn't offer to walk you home and have sex with you? And now that was the worst thing about that night? I just can't handle this guy. I really can't. So Elliot had to use crutches and actually undergo surgery for his broken leg. A moment where you would think a normal person might have some self-reflection and kind of have an aha moment. Not for him. Elliot's mom was feeling bad for him and got him a new BMW because of this. Putting a band-aid on the wound, it is not going to help. You are enabling the problem. Elliot had wanted this nice car for a really long time, and he hoped that maybe the car would get him the attention of girls and he wouldn't have to go through with his plan.
My problem is girls. There are so many beautiful girls here, but none of them give me a chance, and I don't know why. I don't know why you girls are so repulsed by me. It doesn't make sense. I do everything I can to appear attractive to you. I dress nice. I'm sophisticated. I'm magnificent. I have a nice car, a BMW. Well, it's nicer than 90% of the people at my college. I'm polite. I'm the ultimate gentleman. And yet, you girls, you never give me a chance. I don't know why.
Elliot now started planning his day of retribution and laid it out in different phases. In the first phase, he wanted to silently kill as many people as he could by luring people into his apartment through some form of trickery. To do this, he realized he would have to kill both of his roommates so that he could secure the apartment. He wanted to hurt all of the good-looking people first, to cut them, skin them, and then pour boiling water on them while they were still alive, then behead them. He said, "This first phase will represent my vengeance against all of the men who have had pleasurable sex lives while I've had to suffer. Things will be fair once I make them suffer as I did. I will finally even the score." The second phase was going to take place on the day of retribution itself, and this was to represent his war on women. He acknowledges that he can't wipe off every single female from Earth, so instead, he decides to target someone, a group of girls that represents everything he hates. So he says in his manifesto, "After doing a lot of extensive research within the last year, I found out that the sorority with the most beautiful girls is Alpha Phi sorority. I know exactly where their house is, and I've sat outside in my car to stalk them many times. Alpha Phi sorority is full of hot, beautiful, blonde girls, the kind of girls I've always desired but was never able to have because they all look down on me. They are spoiled, heartless, wicked. They think they are superior to me, and if I ever tried to ask one on a date, they would reject me cruelly." He creates an entire plan to kill every single one of them. Now, let's just take a step back really quick. As we talk about similarities or possible similarities with Bryan Kohberger, the girls lived in a house close to Greek Row. They were beautiful. They were blonde. As Elliot said in this, his plan was to stalk them, to go to the house. It was the house of the most beautiful girls. King Road was a party house. Allegedly, he stalked them for 3 months leading up to the murders. This is where a lot of people are seeing the parallels here and drawing the conclusion or belief that Bryan himself is also an incel, like Elliot. Maybe not as extreme, but like Elliot. And some people are even saying, going back to the Papa Rodger account, if that was in fact Bryan, that he created that name because he idolized Elliot, because Elliot has a lot of fanatic followers who still idolize him, which we're going to talk more about, but I wanted to just kind of briefly touch on this. So the final phase of the day of retribution is truly sickening. He says, "On the morning before, I will drive down to my father's house to kill my little brother, denying him of the chance to grow up to surpass me, along with my stepmother, Sumaya, as she will be in the way. My father will be away on one of his business trips, so thankfully I won't have to deal with him. Once I've taken care of my brother and stepmother, I will switch over to the Mercedes SUV and drive it back up to Isla Vista. I will use it as one of my killing machines against my enemies. An SUV will cause a lot more damage than my BMW coupe." Now, his evil and diabolical plan would take place on May 24th, 2014. This is real, guys. This is what he wanted to do. What a sick, just evil POS. Now, before all of this, he documented his life on his YouTube channel with some of the clips that we've just watched. After seeing the videos, some of Elliot's family friends even called for a welfare check on Elliot, but he convinced the police that visited the house that nothing was wrong. Elliot originally planned for his day of retribution for April, but he got a cold, so he postponed it to May instead. Elliot's father also came home early, so he never went to attack his half-brother Jazz or his stepmom Sumaya. Finally, May 24th came, and Elliot released his last video on YouTube.
Hi, Elliot Rodger here. Well, this is my last video. It all has to come to this. Tomorrow is the day of retribution. The day in which I will have my revenge against humanity, against all of you. For the last 8 years of my life, ever since I've hit puberty, I've been forced to endure an existence of loneliness, rejection, and unfulfilled desires, all because girls have never been attracted to me. Girls gave their affection and sex and love to other men, but never to me. I'm 22 years old, and I'm still a virgin. I've never even kissed a girl. I've been through college for 2.5 years. More than that, actually. And I'm still a virgin. And it's been very torturous. College is the time when everyone experiences those things such as sex and fun and pleasure. But in those years, I've had to rot in loneliness. It's not fair.
Images of the terrifying moments in this college town with a gunman on a rampage. Students seen ducking for cover in this surveillance video from the IV Deli Mart as bullets rip through the store's windows.
He fired 2 shots in. It stopped for about 2 seconds before they just started raining through.
Some of those shots killing 20-year-old Chris Michaels Martinez. Investigators say the deli was one of 10 places Friday night right next to the UC Santa Barbara campus where 22-year-old Elliot Rodger hurt or killed people during his mad drive around town, hitting students like Nick Pasachuk, who tonight is still recovering.
Shots fired.
The first calls for help just before 9:30 p.m., but we now know it may have been many hours before that when police say Rodger killed 3 men inside his own apartment, all stabbed repeatedly. Investigators say Rodger then drove to the Alpha Phi sorority house, opening fire on young women in the area, killing 2 members of another sorority. Rodger's next stop, that deli.
I honestly thought that was my last moment. I thought I was going to die.
Survivors say the suspect was smiling as he shot at them. Deputies chasing after him in his black BMW exchanged gunfire with him twice. The rampage ended with a crash.
It would appear as though he took his own life.
Found in Rodger's car, 3 semi-automatic handguns.
Nobody needs to own 3 semi-automatic handguns.
The family of Chris Martinez speaking exclusively with ABC News today, sharing the photos and memorabilia from the life of their only child. They expressed sympathy for the families of all the victims, including, they say, the parents of Elliot Rodger.
Would that be hard for you to meet with the Rodgers?
No, actually. They loved their son too.
Tonight, of the 13 people injured, 6 are still in the hospital, 2 of them in serious condition.
Later, it came out that Elliot had seen many psychiatrists, counselors, and psychologists since his parents sought help for him when he was 9 years old. He was also diagnosed with Asperger's. Nobody had ever thought that he was a deeply violent and disturbed individual that would ever do something like this. His last psychiatrist before the attack prescribed him antipsychotic medication, but he refused to take it and stopped seeing that psychiatrist. He was never in any treatment for mental health disorders, and even though he did consider self-harming himself in the past, he was never violent against others. When he was 15, he was prescribed Xanax and Prozac, but stopped taking it after a year. He also took Paxil as needed. Between May 2013 and May 2014, the year leading up to the attack, he attended 29 counseling sessions. Through those sessions, one report stated that Elliot was recommended to enter a residential treatment facility with daily therapy because he had great difficulty integrating with his peers and showed anger towards couples. At the time of the day of retribution, Elliot was only taking Xanax for anxiety. Before committing his violent rampage, Elliot emailed his entire manifesto to his parents and his counselors. But it was too late. He sent it 13 minutes before he killed his roommates. George Chen, Cheng Yun Hong, and Waihan Wang were Elliot's roommates and one of their friends. All 3 of them were stabbed. One was stabbed 94 times. Catherine Cooper, Christopher Ross Michaels Martinez, and Veronica Weiss were killed in his shooting spree, and more than a dozen others were injured before Elliot took his own life. The victims included an aspiring lawyer, 2 sorority sisters, and 3 best friends. It's truly tragic and heartbreaking. In the beginning, I talked about how Elliot was an inspiring figure to many incels, and some even committed heinous crimes while attributing their actions to him. A Toronto man plowed a van into a crowded Toronto sidewalk and killed 10 people and injured at least 16 more in one of these attacks. Before the attack, he posted on his Facebook in a status that read, "The incel rebellion has already begun. We will overthrow all the Chads and Stacys. All hail the supreme gentleman Elliot Rodger." It's very sick and very scary. There have been a few other people that are less well known and that have either been caught after their crimes or caught while planning to do something. And I do want to clarify that the majority of the self-proclaimed incels are not violent. Just like in any political, religious, or ideological group, there can be a small subgroup that is filled with extremists. Which kind of leads me back to Bryan. We don't know if he idolized Elliot. I'm not saying he did. And even if he did, I'm not saying he's an extremist like Elliot. But there are a lot of parallels to believe that Bryan may in fact be an incel, and that that is the motive behind these murders. Targeting a house full of beautiful people that partied in and out, and he could never quite fit in. He was overweight in high school. He suffered from addiction, allegedly. He couldn't really date without being awkward. A lot of things that start to sound very similar, not only to Elliot, but to the 40,000 people in that subreddit who identified as being very similar to Elliot. A large group of people, which is very, very concerning. This case is crazy, and I want to know what you guys think. So let me know what you think, as well as your thoughts on some of those questions that I asked in the comments. Do you think that there's something that the professionals who he was seeing missed? Is there anything that could have prevented what happened? Would more therapy or counseling or even medication have helped eventually? Or is it just an extremely unfortunate worst case scenario that couldn't have been prevented since Elliot was so dedicated and determined to this cause? Is this somebody that would have always fallen through the cracks no matter what? I don't know. It's a tough one. And my biggest question, do you see parallels with Bryan Kohberger? And if so, which ones? Let me know in the comment section so we can get the conversation going. And also let me know if there are any other parallels that you identified in this video that I didn't mention. Let me know if I missed something. Anyways, I wanted to just give you guys a bit more insight into who Elliot Rodgers was, because there has been so much conversation about him as of late due to the Idaho massacre. And I'm still following along with all of that closely. I haven't put an update out in the last few days just because there isn't really much to update on. I don't want to put a video out just to put a video out for the sake of, content. So once there is something to update you guys on, I certainly am going to jump on here and make a video. And as I mentioned in my previous videos, I'm going to try to have some more experts on here, some prosecutors, some defense attorneys who can tell us, more strategy and what he might be trying to do, some more profilers, the works. So if you want to make sure you don't miss any of that as we go over and deep dive the Idaho 4 case, make sure you subscribe by pressing right now. Take a minute, press it. It's the red button. Okay, make sure you subscribe and also give this video a thumbs up really quick, even if you're already subscribed, and show your support for the channel that way. And thank you guys so much for tuning in with me today. I know I was a little bit kind of like sassy off the cuff, a little bit different vibe than I normally do. I just can't with this guy. And it's just like, it made me want to have a session where I kind of just like talk a lot of crap. So hopefully you aren't offended too much. And if you are, I'm sorry, I'll try to do better in the future. All right, guys, thanks again for tuning in. And until the next one, stay safe.